Talk about some of the things that we've learned. I'm actually going to start not with necessarily what's happening at the winter meetings, but obviously you heard Jerry Dipoto on Sirius XM and obviously had coverage of it. Was there anything Jerry talked about in terms of their willingness to be aggressive and also not wanting to deal arms that stood out to you?
No, I listened to Sirius interview, and then we met with him, a few hours later. I think it was 40 minutes or so. I think they want to make moves. They would like to have a better idea of what moves are there or available. It's just not happening at the rate that they want. I think he's itching. This is a guy that makes a lot of transactions, even if they're on the margins of the roster, quite a bit, and he hasn't been able to do that. I mean, really, they've added Austin Shenton, which is more of a trade of opportunity. To me, like they want to make a move. I think they would love to finalize the deal to sign Carlos Santana to be a veteran guy to help out at first base with Luke Raley and just get that done. But I think Santana's kind of weighing his options. Same with like Justin Turner. I know they've had meetings with Justin Turner. They've had offers. I think Justin Turner is like looking around at the market going, well, maybe I can go back to the Dodgers, things like that. So I think that's been slowed. And then like the trade thing, the trade thing is different because the Mariners have been so reluctant to discuss starting pitching. They will listen to offers, but they've made it really known that if you're going to try and get one of our starters, you better offer us a lot. So it better be something where we sit up and take notice, and everybody usually offers low in case somebody's dumb enough or whatever, or you ask for the moon in case somebody's dumb enough. Well, the Mariners are like, hey, we're going to ask for a lot in case somebody's willing to say yes, and then we'll reassess. And I think it's been out there that they don't want to do that. And that usually puts you in a pretty good position. But also at the same time, they'll listen. I mean, they're listening to offers. They're just not going to say no. Like a team calls up and says, hey, we really want to put together a package for George Kirby. And it's not like Jerry Dipoto saying no. It's more like, okay, put it together. But, it better have, major league talent, significant major league talent for us to do that. And to me, the main guy that they would be the most willing or just to listen to offers on would be Luis Castillo, and that's simply because of his age and the money owed to him. With the Mariners and having their kind of salary limitations, taking $22.75 million off the books for the next 3 years, each of the next 3 years would be significant. And he could get something in return. If you look at the starting pitching market, he could get you a real major league player in return.
Divish, why doesn't he just say that? Why doesn't he say, like, look, he's made it clear that he doesn't want to really deal anyone in the rotation, but why not just be aggressive and be like, look, come put some offers on the table. It's going to take a lot, but let's do that. Because more for the fans, in my opinion, because, we're here doing radio every day, looking at the text lines, and people just feel like it's the same thing every year. Is he not aware? Does he not look at Twitter or kind of tap in with the fans? Like, I feel like if he just gave them something to believe in, the offseason could go a lot smoother.
Yeah, I think if he was smart, he wouldn't look at Twitter. I don't know how much he does. I don't even like looking at my own Twitter. I think, and also, like, if you think about it, Jerry's been very measured in what he says publicly now after the pressure from a couple of years ago. So I think he's guarded in a way that he doesn't want to tip his hand. I'm sure he's told, what he says to us versus what he says to teams is probably a little different, at least on the record. Off the record, we've heard, they're listening, they're talking. They know that they need to supplement the offense. They would prefer not to do it from their starters. They would like to do prospects. But the problem is like more teams are competing now and not trying to rebuild. So those prospects don't have the same value as they might have had in other years where teams are really trying to tear it down and rebuild again. I think, sometimes it's who's saying it and kind of how he says it. I mean, right now, there's just a segment of the fan base that really doesn't want to hear anything that Jerry Dipoto says. Because even if he came out and said, we're going to be aggressive, we want to do this, want to do that, most of those people will be like, nah, man, you said this before, we don't believe you. So, like, to me, like, and I don't want that, but really anything he says isn't going to work for him because it's going to go either way. There are people that don't believe him, or you're setting up expectations for action that might not happen because you're dealing with other people. So I don't know. I mean, like, the bigger issue is like, this is what the fact is that they're having to to weigh trading a starting pitcher to access the talent that they need to supplement their roster speaks more to an ownership issue that, like, they just haven't done enough. You can talk about adding payroll this year and making it better, but if they would have added payroll the last few years, they might not be in this position where they need to add 3 guys in the infield. Like, they need to find another first baseman, they need to find a second baseman, they need to find a third baseman. I mean, we all know last year, and I wrote this earlier this year, but Matt Chapman was out there at the very end, right before spring training, when everybody knew that, like, this platoon between Luis Urias and Josh Rojas wasn't looking so stellar. Matt Chapman was available, and they didn't want to sign him because they didn't have the money to sign him. They couldn't sign him, and that's where they're at. Because if they had signed Chapman, maybe I know he opted out of his Giants contract, but re-signed again. Maybe they haven't. I just think that the opportunity that they're forced into adding multiple positions to what should be a more finished product because they have not spent enough in the last 3 years. And like even last year, we talked about, these moves didn't work well. The moves didn't work well, yes, because players underperformed, but the concept that they had to make that many moves to add players to help them is flawed thinking too. Like, this is like, you shouldn't have to do that much to add to your team. It should increase enough to just say, look, we're going to increase this, so we're going to add. If we have to trade some guys, we're not having to force to trade major league talent. We can find a way to do this. So you're not trying to fill 3 infield holes. I think that's the bigger issue that they're facing right now, is that they put themselves in this position, not just from last year's moves, but from the last few off seasons where they've done essentially nothing.
I think ownership is often able to point to large markets and go, look, Seattle isn't that. But I think that a lot of fans aren't expecting them to spend like the Dodgers or the Yankees or the Mets. That does, though, leave a lot of question marks of, okay, well, what does that number look like? Ryan, I'm not going to ask what that number looks like because we don't know what their books look like. But why do you think ownership is hesitant to add payroll?
I think they're risk averse, and like they remember the burnt salaries or the bad salaries, the bad contracts more. I do think that the Mariners don't, and I think the idea of overpaying for market value on hitters just terrifies them. And that's what they're going to have to do. But there is a perception no hitter really wants to come to Seattle. If you're a guy on a 1-year pillow contract looking to put up numbers to get a bigger deal, you don't go to Seattle to do that because it's hard to hit there.
Right.
So I think that's a bigger problem too, as well as like the reputation of the organization in terms of hitting in T-Mobile Park and just the lack of trophies, as Jerry Dipoto mentioned. That puts you behind the 8 ball with free agents anyways. So then you have to spend more. And I don't think that they're just comfortable spending, 20% over market value to go get a guy, especially if it's not a guy they really like. And then, then you have the recency bias of like Mitch Garver spent $24 million, and what did you get from him this year? So we've talked about it before. Well, you're buying him at age 34. You're not buying him at 30. So I think that's a problem. Is it's easy for them to remember the contracts and the money spent on players that didn't perform. But look at Nelson Cruz. They overpaid for him at the time, and he performed. And he performed well. And I just saw him. He's like the best-looking dude here, I swear to God. He's like
so
the
nice.
nicest guy.
He's like the nicest
dude.
dude.
The nicest guy. Yeah, so, I mean, that's where the Mariners are at. Is like they put themselves in a position where, like, by reputation and by a lack of payroll and everything else, it's difficult to add a free agent hitter. And you can say, like, the trades they've done to add hitters in the past have not worked either. They've been misses. But part of it where they're at is because they have some – you shouldn't be filling this many holes the way it's set up. But it's a product of not having success in the last few off seasons. And so many of their moves have been structured by limitation instead of fit. I mean, I think I said it once with Adam Jude. The Mariners operate not on the roster they want, but the roster they can afford. That's how they have to build. And that's a tough way to live in a situation where they aren't a poor team. They're not the Rays. They're not the A's. They have a stable group. It just would take more investment from the ownership than what they're used to doing. And I don't know that we're going to see that, honestly.
Man, you just got me going right now. The team that they can afford, I remember maxing out a credit card to impress my wife back in the day before we were dating him. Look, 16 years later, they need to do something like that. Then also, you had me when you said guys think, oh, you don't want to go to Seattle. That goes back to the perception of this organization that they're not going to spin and it's hard to hit there. Is there anything that Jerry can do to kind of get away from that? And then is it as simple as making an adjustment to the stadium to fix the batter's eye? I mean, there's so many ways you can go with this. Just how do they change the perception of who they are?
Well, yeah, they got to go out and have some guys that find success, you know, and like it's just easy to point at the track record of hitters that have come in, and the data is right there. I don't, you know, would closing the roof more often in the springtime make the park play more fair to the hitters? The hitters believe that. You know, like I get before, but like Chuck Armstrong, that was always a big thing. If it's not raining, we want the roof open. We want outdoor baseball, this and that. But if it's detrimental to your team's success, maybe you should reassess. Mm-hmm. And I'm not gonna lie to you, it's freezing ass cold there when that roof's open in April. Close it. It stops the wind from going in so much.
And then we can have more soft serve.
Yes, exactly. I mean, like I just think there are ways, you know, should they look at the batter's eye? Yeah, they should absolutely look at the batter's eye. I think they should look at all things possible to make it more neutral than it is. It's because it's such an extreme pitcher's park. Because the one thing is like, oh, we don't want to hurt our pitchers. Their pitchers are good enough to pitch well there regardless. Mm-hmm. You know, they're good. The park helps them a lot, but they're not good because of the park. They're good before. The park helps them be a little bit better. I don't think it's like Logan Gilbert's suddenly going to start giving up 4 homers a game if they make the park a little more hitter fair. So, yeah, they should absolutely do that. And if they haven't done that, then, you know, if they haven't done that already and really assessed all that, then that's on them. And they're failing the situation. They're failing the team by not looking at that. Because, again, it's not just about the team you have now. It's the team you have moving forward next year or whatever. The window for these guys, your starting rotation, getting tighter and tighter as they get more expensive. And so all of a sudden it's like, you know, how much longer are you going to be able to keep all these guys? Because it doesn't look like with each passing year, if they don't sign them to extension, that means they're 1 year closer to free agency. And looking at the money that Blake Snell just got, it's like, okay, maybe they got to do everything they can to make it better from a hitting standpoint, not just by players, but like whether it's adjusting the park, you know, bringing different hitting coaches, different hitting approach, everything else. They have to find something different to make it work. Because it's not like they're going to be able to – they're not obviously not just going to go out and spend on players that can, you know, out-hit the park. But, like, you know, it's like we talked about, like, how many left-handed power hitters they have. Luke Braley has success there because the ball's truer to right field. Get some better lefty hitters. Right. You know, things like that. It's just – they put themselves in an odd situation where they have to operate between the margins so much, and it really shouldn't have been this way. Coming off the year when they made the postseason and the Cal Raleigh homer, it should have been a real significant and like open push to make the team better. But it was really like, hey man, we did this. We think we can do it again. We think we can be better with just the same group. Well, no, that's not how it works. So they needed to do more and they haven't. And now they're in this position where they're stuck trying to still operate the same way and everything's getting more expensive and the market isn't the same as it always is.